This push to challenge the West in space technology is taking off, launching more than 30 satellites into orbit alone this year. The latest, part of the Beidou navigation satellite system, is key to the future of Chinese aerospace and will eventually enable it to use GPS technology on a level comparable with the United States. Well, the country's latest device was fired into orbit this morning from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center in Sichuan province. From there, our Asia correspondent Tom Cheshire sent this report.
The rocket's called the Long March. It's named after the legendary and brutal retreat made by Chairman Mao. But this is about China's advance.
We're at a safe distance away. It's way louder, faster, more powerful than you expect. China's come a long way in space. It wants to go a lot further to blaze its own trail through the sky.
It serves the world and benefits the mankind.
More important than the rocket, though, is its cargo. 2 satellites to make up a navigation system called Beidou, a rival to GPS developed by the United States of America.
一步一步应该说逼近了这个 GPS， 所以北斗系统的成功发展呢，应该是中国航天进步的一个重要标志。但是整个跟美国的航天来比的话，可能还不光取决于卫星导航这一个领域，还有更多的领域。
Beidou began in 1994. Its first stage was complete by 2003. 3 satellites providing coverage just to China. By 2012 and the second stage of the project, the network had 14 satellites covering the Asia-Pacific region. Stage 3 is the final one. By the end of this year, it will cover countries that have signed up to China's Belt and Road Initiative, expanding to the whole world by 2020 with 35 satellites. Those satellites are supposed to support the high-tech industries of the future, like driverless tractors. But Beidou is also meant to increase China's influence in the world. And the navigation system, supposedly more accurate than GPS, has obvious applications for China's military.
These are used for everything from maritime navigation to precision weaponry. It's what makes smart bombs smart, essentially. So the more that China is able to access these signals and the more accurate these signals become, the more they can integrate that into their military. And then they could potentially start to rival the US in terms of precision military operations.
The mountains here in Sichuan province used to be quiet and peaceful. But China is picking up the pace of launches at a furious rate, all part of its towering ambition. Tom Cheshire, Sky News in Xichang.
Well, for more on this and what it could mean for space, let's bring in Per Wimmer, adventurer and space advocate. A very good evening to you. It's fascinating, isn't it, to see what they're doing. Is this driven largely, do you think, by the needs of the military, or do China's space ambitions go far further?
It's first and foremost the military, but it certainly also has civil implications. For military purposes, having your own GPS system means you control the satellites, you know what's going to happen, nobody's going to be able to interfere with it, unlike if you have to rely on other people's satellites. And GPS system is very important. It's significant in military terms. It is significant in civil and commercial terms. So it makes perfect sense for a big nation like China to put these satellites up there. For military purposes, you can really control exactly where a smart bomb might land, or your ships on the oceans, and there's many other applications. And the same for satellite purposes, like we know from our smartphone, our own smartphone, and our sat nav in the car.
But it's part of a bigger picture too, isn't it, in terms of their space ambitions? The idea to land a rover on the dark side of the moon, to set up an experimental lunar base to trial growing potatoes for food. Where do they plan to take their space investment, the Chinese?
The Chinese are very ambitious. I think there's no boundary in their book, and the checkbook is really reasonably large. So their plans is definitely to cater for military and civil purposes with these GPS satellites, but it also comes in very, very handy when you set your goals on the moon and beyond. So there's no doubt the Chinese space program is very ambitious, and this is just a part of it. But I think the first and foremost use of this is military and secondly civil.
Yes, indeed. And in terms of the commerce, we saw in Tom's report the idea of driverless tractors to help feed their massive population. They're no doubt thinking ahead to economic advances of the future this way.
Absolutely. But China's not the only ones doing it. We have all been relying on the US GPS system for a long, long time. But don't forget, the Europeans are also heading down that way with the Galileo program. And even the UK has got an ambition in this direction. Everybody of a significant nation state is aware of the importance and significance of satellites and GPS systems and controlling your own system. Not just because you know who is in it and who is up there, but also controlling interference. In military context, there's an increasing amount of anti-GPS, if you like, trying to interfere and therefore confuse the enemy with anti-GPS issues. So therefore, it is very important to control your GPS system, and it makes perfect sense. It also makes perfect sense for China to start with the Belt and Road countries and then expand to the globe from there. It's very much in line with the Chinese strategy of economic and political dominance.
Absolutely. In terms of space dominance, do they mean to take over from Russia and even the US? And why the moon? Doesn't that slightly feel like it's been done before?
I don't think they aim to take over as such when it comes to space dominance, but they certainly want to put themselves on the map. They want to be up there together with the Russians and the Americans, who historically have dominated space. Here comes China, and not far behind we'll probably see India showing up as well. Space has this sort of thing like the Apollo program had in the early 70s and late 60s, that basically it shows a nation state how great and amazing that state is. It's a very visual sign of progress of science and space. And also, don't forget, it holds an enormous capacity of inspiration to young Chinese people and school kids who might have ambitious engineering ambitions.
And indeed, even by 2020, planning to land on Mars, which seems extremely ambitious, doesn't it? By 2022, its own version of an international space station. Who will be first on Mars, in your view?
I think it's too early to predict. Certainly, the Americans and the Chinese are working hard at this. There's a lot of great plans. But Mars is a difficult place to go. It is far. The moon is relatively close by, if you like. You can go up there in a couple of days and come back within a week. Easily. To Mars is a lot further away. You're talking at least of a 12 to 18 months travel time, which requires a lot more engineering. And what about, do you want to land there? And how do you do it coming back again? It's big budgets, big bucks, and a big engineering challenge. It sounds like a next logical goal, but Mars is a lot further away.
Tell you what, it's all mind-blowing, isn't it? And inspirational, as you said, for school children everywhere across the globe. Per Wimmer, thank you very much indeed for bringing us your insight into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, still ahead.